Have you ever found yourself just completely lost in a piece of music
Definitely.
where you feel the composer's, joy or sorrow, maybe even their triumph, like it's actually your own?
Absolutely is a powerful connection.
It's pretty amazing, isn't it? How just a few notes, maybe combined with some, well, seemingly simple instructions on a page, can capture these really deep human emotions.
And speak to us across time. Yeah, it's quite something.
Well, today we're embarking on a truly unique journey. We're diving deep into the world of musical composition and performance, too, looking at one specific piece that really shows this power.
Which piece are we exploring?
It's Tarek Nasr's Martheya No. 5 for piano. And we're not just, listening to it superficially. We want to understand the blueprint, the emotional blueprint.
Right, getting under the hood, so to speak.
Exactly. Think of it as a shortcut to being really well informed about what the composer was thinking, feeling, intending.
And the great thing is, our insights for this deep dive, they come directly from the source.
The composer himself.
Yes, Tarek Nasr. He's provided this incredibly detailed analysis of his own work. He shares his personal vision, the intricate layers of meaning that he embedded within the composition.
Wow.
It's a rare thing, really. A privileged glimpse into the creative process. We get to understand not just what he wrote, but why he wrote it that way.
Okay, so that's our mission then. We're going to meticulously peel back the layers of this fascinating elegy. We'll uncover its structure, sure, but also the very specific tools, almost surgical tools a composer uses to tell a performer how to evoke certain emotions, really nuanced feelings.
And the surprising depth you find in every single choice.
Right. From a tiny tempo change to how a chord is voiced, hopefully you, listening, will walk away with a much richer understanding of how musical expression actually works.
And maybe a new appreciation for those hidden narratives in the music you already love.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start by setting the scene for Martheya No. 5. Its full title tells us a lot right away.
It does. It's Elegy No. 5 in commemoration of the Egyptian writer and thinker Mustafa Mahmud.
So right there, its purpose is profound. Commemoration. Elegy. But here's where it gets, really interesting.
The origin story.
Yeah. It isn't a completely new piece, just born from Nasr's imagination alone. It's actually a brilliant piano reinterpretation.
That's something else.
Yes, of a musical introduction that was originally composed for flute and timpani.
Oh, wow. Different instrumentation entirely.
Exactly. And that original piece was by the esteemed Egyptian musician Mahmoud Effat. He wrote it for a popular TV program called Science and Faith.
Okay, I see. So Effat wrote the original theme.
Right. And Nasr reinterpreted it for piano. So because of this really unique, quite beautiful collaboration, you find both Mahmoud Effat and Tarek Nasr credited as composers.
That makes sense. A shared musical DNA.
It's a wonderful example, I think, of how musical ideas can evolve, transform, gain new life across different instruments, different minds even. What an inheritance for a piece.
Absolutely. And that core concept, Martheya, or elegy, it's fascinating in itself.
Its roots go way back, right? Not just music.
Way back. Centuries of Arabic poetry, literature, other arts. Long before music really formally adopted the term.
Yeah.
And its purpose isn't just one thing.
More complex than just sadness.
Much more. It serves to mourn, yes, a profound loss, but also to praise the virtues, the accomplishments, the legacy of the person who passed.
Right. Remembrance.
And crucially, it also functions as a final farewell. A valediction. It's this comprehensive artistic expression that navigates that whole complex landscape of grief, memory, and maybe, ultimately, acceptance.
So how does Nasr translate that into music? Does he follow a set pattern?
He does. In his elegy compositions, he adopts a very specific four-section structure. Think of it like a classical poem following a specific rhyme scheme or thematic path. It gives it shape.
Okay. What are the sections?
He calls the first one Section A, Announcement of Death, or a reference to the deceased. This is where that primary melodic theme, the one linked to the subject of the elegy, first appears.
Like your musical signature.
Exactly, their sonic fingerprint. Then comes Section B, which is specifically for the expression of sorrow and grief.
Okay, so the raw emotion comes in here.
Yes, with entirely new melodic material, crafted specifically to convey sadness, loss, maybe even that bewilderment, those unanswered questions that come with grief.
And after the sorrow?
Then we get Section D. This marks a definite shift. It's dedicated to highlighting virtues and merits, focusing on the positive attributes, achievements, the good deeds.
So it gets brighter.
It aims for a brighter, more reflective feel, moving away from the immediate darkness towards celebrating the life lived.
Makes sense. And the last part?
Finally, Section E, or a similar concluding section, serves as the farewell or valediction. This is where everything draws to a close, often emphasizing that final goodbye and maybe a sense of peace.
So it's a real journey. Shock, sorrow, remembrance, farewell.
A complete emotional arc, precisely.
It sounds like a deeply personal, almost, I don't know, architectural approach to mapping out grief. And what really stands out to me in Martheya No. 5 is how Nasr applies this structure, but with a twist.
The recurrence.
Exactly. It feels almost rondo-like. While those 4 core sections are there, clearly define that main melodic theme from Section A, the Mustafa Mahmoud theme, it keeps coming back.
Appearing between the other sections.
Yeah, like a memory resurfacing. It gives it this feeling of revisiting or a lingering presence. Contemplation.
That's interesting. Is that standard for all his elegies?
Well, he clarifies that this specific rondo-like thing isn't a hard rule for all of them. Sometimes parts might not repeat, or maybe Section A only echoes at the very end.
Does the variations exist?
Right. But the constant, the absolute fixed element across all his elegies is the clarity and the distinction of those 4 main emotional sections. He really wants the listener to feel that progression.
The emotional narrative.
Yeah, like turning pages in a deeply moving story, each chapter clear in its purpose.
And connecting this back to the practicalities, knowing the tangible details helps a performer immensely. It's their map.
Right, like the length?
Yeah, it's 8 pages, 81 measures long, takes about 7 minutes to play, which puts it at an intermediate technical level, accessible.
Okay.
But what's truly key for understanding its emotional core, its harmonic language, is the key signature. It shows blab and ebb prominently.
Which tells a musician.
It tells them we're operating within a specific modal space. Think of it as the piece's underlying emotional climate or color palette. In this case, it's related to blab major and its derivatives.
Like what?
Scales like G minor in its natural melodic harmonic forms, and, very importantly, D double harmonic major.
Which has a particular sound.
A very distinct, almost exotic sound. It's also widely known as the Hijaz scale on D, deeply rooted in traditional Arabic music.
So choosing that mode isn't just arbitrary notes.
Not at all. Nasr's tapping into a powerful, preloaded emotional and cultural language right from the start. It sets the feeling before the melody even really unfolds.
Like choosing paints before starting a picture.
Precisely. And for the performer, understanding this specific modal space, recognizing the shared chords between these scales, that's crucial. It's their map of the harmonic territory.
Why is it so crucial?
It lets them grasp the underlying harmonic logic, master the modulations, those shifts between keys that happen throughout the piece. Without that understanding, some sections might feel strange or disconnected.
Ah, okay. It prevents confusion.
Exactly. It helps them anticipate, embrace, and correctly interpret the harmonic journey Nasr intends, making sure the emotional message lands correctly.
Okay, so we've got the structure, the kind of architectural blueprint. Now let's shift focus to the art of expression itself. This is where the music really breathes.
Absolutely. This is the heart of it.
And right at the beginning of Martheya No. 5, Nasr gives this fundamental overarching instruction, espressivo assai.
Which translates pretty directly.
Yeah, express deeply or intensely. And for Nasr, this isn't just some vague, romantic era suggestion like play with feeling.
No, it's much more specific in his mind. For a performer, it immediately triggers 2 critical questions.
Which are?
First, what exactly am I expressing? Which, as we've discussed, is the elegy's purpose, mourning, praising, farewell. The whole arc.
Okay, the what? And the second?
By what precise means will I express it? This is where technique meets artistry. How do you actually do espressivo assai?
Right. And it's important to clarify what that doesn't mean, isn't it? It's not about, flailing around at the piano.
Exactly. For professional musicians, it's generally not about exaggerated body language for show. Physical expressions are often unconscious reflections of their deep internal connection to the music.
Or sometimes just necessary technique.
Sometimes, yes. A necessary physical tool for neuromuscular control to get the precise sound they hear in their head out through their fingers. You see many great performers who seem quite still, yet their playing is incredibly expressive.
So what does Nasr mean by it, then, in his context?
He means you must clearly, overtly, highlight and exaggerate the expressive tools you have, making the emotional intent absolutely unmistakable to the listener. No subtlety left to chance.
Okay, so he outlines specific tools for this.
He meticulously outlines 4 essential technical tools a pianist needs to master to achieve this deep expression in his works. The first one is pretty intuitive. Tempo or speed.
Right. Fast or slow.
Well, It can be fixed, indicated precisely, like with a metronome mark. That gives a rigid framework. But what's often more expressive, and used a lot here, are the variable or gradual tempos.
Like speeding up or slowing down.
Exactly. Accelerando, a gradual speeding up. Think of a heart quickening. Ritardando, a gradual slowing down like a sigh or reflection.
Okay.
And then there's rubato. This is really the performer's secret weapon for expressive freedom.
How does that work?
It's a fluctuating tempo. The performer subtly speeds up and slows down within a phrase, stretching time here, compressing it there, like a singer taking liberties with rhythm for emotional emphasis.
Giving it a human feel.
But breathing quality, absolutely. It can dramatically change the impact.
Okay, tool 1, tempo. What's next?
Tool 2, dynamics. Sound intensity. The whole spectrum from softest whisper to loudest roar.
P's and F's?
Right. P's for piano, soft. PP pianissimo, very soft. PP pianissimo, extremely soft. And on the loud end, F forte. Loud, F fortissimo, very loud. F fortissimo, extremely loud.
And the middle ground?
Crucial intermediate levels like imp, mezzo piano, medium soft, and MF, mezzo forte, medium loud. Plus the gradual changes. Crescendo, getting louder, and decrescendo, getting softer. It's a huge palette.
Now, here's something fascinating you mentioned earlier. Dynamics aren't absolute, are they? Like, forte isn't always the same volume.
Precisely. That's a key insight from Nasr. The actual loudness or softness isn't a fixed number on a dial. It depends on so many factors.
Such as?
The piano itself, its type, its size, a concert grand versus an upright. The acoustics of the room, a resonant hall versus a small carpeted room. Even the audience size.
And the performer.
And the performer's physical strength, even their age. So Nasr advises performers, first, find your maximum fortissimo on that piano, in that space, without distortion. Then gauge everything else relative to that point.
So Nasr in a big hall is different from me at home.
Exactly. And crucially for his works, Nasr's expressed deeply demands exaggerated clarity and contrast between these dynamic extremes.
Meaning?
If he writes a crescendo, he wants the difference between the start and end points to be really obvious, almost exaggerated. No mistaking the shift in feeling.
Got it. So tempo, dynamics, what's tool 3?
Tool 3 is articulation. This is about phrasing, the connection between notes, how they speak to each other.
Like smooth or choppy?
Basically, yes.
Yeah.
Nasr thinks of it anatomically, like joints connecting things. The main types are legato full connection, smooth singing, staccato clear separation, crisp detached notes, and portato or mezzo staccato somewhere in between, gently separated but still connected.
Okay. Seems straightforward enough for a piano.
But here's the critical challenge. Unlike a voice or a violin, the piano is fundamentally a percussion instrument.
Right, hammers hitting strings.
Exactly. You hit the key, sound happens, it decays. Release the key, a damper stops the sound. There's no natural legato on a piano.
So how do pianists play legato passages?
Through immense skill and, as Naos calls it, artistic deception. They have to deeply understand the piano's mechanics, how the hammers work, the role of the pedals to simulate legato.
Fooling the listener.
Essentially, yes. Fooling the ear into hearing a continuous connected sound that the instrument itself doesn't naturally produce on its own. It requires specific training, controlling the whole arm, wrist, fingers, managing the force precisely.
Wow. So the magic is forcing the instrument to be something it isn't.
That's a great way to put it. Conquering its limitations, it's where real artistry shines.
Amazing. Okay, that's tempo, dynamics, articulation. What's the fourth tool?
And finally, a tool that might seem purely mechanical, but holds immense expressive power. Pedaling, the use of the pedals.
Ah, yes. The feet get involved, often overlooked by listeners, I think.
Absolutely fundamental for a pianist. So, a quick overview for anyone unfamiliar. Grand pianos usually have 3.
Okay.
The right pedal is the sustain or damper pedal, most common. It lifts all the dampers off all the strings at once.
Letting everything ring out.
Exactly. Notes resonate even after keys are released. Creates that rich, blended sound, harmony swelling together.
Got it. What about the left one?
The left pedal is the soft pedal, or una corda, one string. It shifts the keyboard and hammers slightly.
So they hit fewer strings.
Right. Instead of 3 strings per note, maybe only 1 or 2. This reduces volume, yes, but more importantly, it changes the sound color. Makes it darker, more muted, veiled. Una corda in the score means press it. Tre corda means release it for the brighter sound.
Interesting. And the middle one, not all pianos have that, right?
Correct. The middle pedal is the sostenuto pedal. It's quite clever. It lists dampers only for notes being held down when the pedal is pressed.
So you can sustain specific notes?
Precisely. Sustain a bass note, for instance, while playing detached notes above it. Creates complex, layered textures.
So the pedals aren't just on-off things.
Not at all. The right pedal supports legato and resonance. The left controls intensity and that brilliance or darkness of the sound. Together, they massively contribute to expressive depth. They help sculpt the sound. Okay, before we dive into the specifics of how these tools are used in Marthya No. 5, I just want to reiterate something Nasr emphasizes.
What's that?
His analysis reflects his personal understanding and interpretation of his own work. He's not laying down universal laws of music.
Right, it's his vision for this piece.
Exactly. He's sharing the specific intent behind his compositions, which gives us this incredible window into his creative mind, like getting a personal tour from the architect.
That's a great perspective. Okay, so let's put ourselves there. At the very beginning of the elegy, imagine that opening atmosphere. What should we picture?
Picture a solemn, dignified moment, a mix of awe and poised sorrow. Not explosive grief, but a sense of gravity, a quiet unfolding.
And how does Nasr create that right from the start?
Meticulously.
Yeah.
First, the tempo. Incredibly slow, 40 quarter notes per minute. Immediately sets a deliberate, weighty, ceremonial pace.
Slow march feel.
Precisely. Second, pedaling. The instruction is absolute. The left pedal, una corda, must be pressed from the very first note. Instantly gives the sound that dark, muted, veiled quality, like a heavy curtain rising slowly.
And dynamics?
Dynamics are mezzo piano, medium soft. Nasr says it's as if the event has not yet fully arrived. An anticipation, not the full declaration yet.
Okay. What about the hands? What are they doing?
The left hand plays this repetitive, persistent rhythm. It really evokes a funeral march. And this rhythm becomes a signature motif and emotional anchor. It comes back whenever the main theme, the deceased's theme, returns.
Grounding it in that feeling.
Yes. And here's a really crucial, unique detail about tempo fluctuation, speaking directly to his espressivo assai idea.
Go on.
Nasr instructs a sudden, maybe 30% reduction in speed right nudo on the last quarter note of every single measure.
Every measure.
Every measure. Followed by an immediate return to the original tempo, a tempo, at the start of the next. He says this allows the performer to contemplate the details of that final note.
A built-in pause for reflection.
On a suspended, almost breathless quality before the steady march resumes. A profound personal pause woven right into the rhythm.
That requires incredible control. So, with that foundation laid, how is the main theme itself presented in Section A, Mustafa Mahmood's theme?
When it first appears, it's played delicato delicately, with a very subtle, gradual increase in intensity, a soft crescendo. The very first note is almost imperceptible, marked PA, pianissimo.
How do you even play that soft?
Anna suggests a very light touch, maybe the tip of the thumb, pressing close to the keys from a low height, like a distant whisper, a faint memory.
Okay, but then it repeats.
Immediately repeated. And here the intensity grows significantly. Instruction. Release the left pedal, tricorda. Sound emerges from all three strings, brighter, louder, more present.
But harmony changes too.
Yes, it becomes denser. Instead of simple arpeggios, you hear a full diminished chord in both hands. That chord itself carries tension, unease.
So it's a symbolic progression.
He explains it vividly, first time. Like a procession far off, a faint rumor of sorrow. The repetition. It places you inside the event. Grief becomes immediate, tangible.
And you mentioned another mark, tenuto.
Right, a tenuto mark, that little line under a note, often appears just before the right nudo drop. It means prolong that note slightly, makes it feel suspended, weighted, adds to the pause.
And how do these phrases typically end?
Consistently with a gradual slowing down, ritardando, and decrease in volume, decrescendo, conveying what Nasr calls submission to fate, quiet acceptance of the loss. This specific emotional cadence, he stresses, must always be there whenever this descending melodic bit appears.
Ensuring that core message of resignation is consistent.
Okay, so after that contemplation, how do we transition to Section B, the section for raw sorrow and grief? Section B is a palpable shift, like the dam breaking after quiet reflection. The main melody here often starts on the dominant degree and ascends.
Creating what kind of feeling?
A questioning or hesitant quality. Embodying confusion, bewilderment, that ongoing, almost desperate inquiry that comes with deep sadness. It's not the stately feel of Section A.
And harmonically, is it stable?
Far from it. A key feature of Section B is its richness in modulations. Key changes that lead you through shifting emotional landscapes.
Which keys does it move through?
Frequently through a descending sequence of double harmonic major scales. A double harmonic, then G, then F, eventually returning to D, double harmonic major, the Hijaz scale.
So constantly shifting.
These flowing transitions are fundamental. They create the harmonic fabric supporting that sense of bewilderment and continuous questioning. You never settle. Reflects a restlessness of grief.
Like being emotionally adrift.
Exactly. Another huge feature here is repetitive structures, both small scale within phrases and large scale repeating whole sections.
And Nasr sees this as an opportunity.
A golden opportunity for espressivo assai. He says repeating identically is unnatural. You wouldn't say, I'm thirsty 3 times the same way.
Right.
So each repetition is a chance for varied expression, using tempo, dynamics, articulation, pedaling to show increasing urgency, different meanings, evolving emotions.
So the performer gets to shape that evolution.
Well, Nasr emphasizes it's the composer's job to give instructions for these repetitions, guiding how they should evolve, not leave it totally free.
Okay. And how does the emotion shift in the repetitions here?
Dramatically. The first time Section B's theme appears, it evokes private internalized sorrow, someone crying alone.
And the repetition?
Transformed.
Yeah.
It becomes stormy and turbulent, an outcry, a public wailing.
How is that achieved?
Through compositional techniques, denser harmonies, more harmonic tension, and the emergence of polyphony.
Multiple independent melodies at once.
Yes, and the challenge for the pianist is immense. Those lines must sound distinct, like separate voices in conversation.
How? Using different expression for each line.
Exactly. Varied dynamics, articulation, maybe subtle tempo shifts for each voice. Nasr gives an example. A heavy, slow line, like a tuba, with tenuto on each note, against lighter accompanying lines. You have to make each emotional thread clear.
Like juggling different conversations. Yeah. Wow.
And finally, harmonic tension is huge in this section. Lots of diminished and augmented chords, outright dissonances, creates tension that needs resolution, mirroring the turmoil of grief.
And understanding the overall modal space helps here.
Immensely. Helps the performer see the origin and intended resolution of these tense harmonies, gives them purpose, direction, prevents them feeling random.
Makes sense. It sounds incredibly demanding, emotionally and technically. You mentioned Nasr even warns about a physical jump.
He does. Very practical advice. There's a specific rapid jump for the left hand from left to right side of the keyboard.
What's the danger?
Trying to make a wide, sweeping, rotational movement from the left at speed could cause wrist injury.
So what's the solution?
He advises slow, careful practice. Prepare the hand before the jump. Move the whole arm close to the target area first. It's almost anatomical advice.
Shows his understanding of playing. And there's a quick mention of a harmonic deviation.
Ah, yes. A moment where a D major chord appears unexpectedly, where you might expect something more tense, like an F-sharp diminished 7.
Why do that?
He uses it to preempt the feeling of resolution. A little harmonic surprise, keeping the listener slightly off balance, reflecting that bewilderment. A subtle psychological touch.
So after that emotional storm in Section B, that raw grief and confusion, the elegy needs to, reset somehow. Where does it go next?
It takes a crucial breath, yes. It returns to familiar ground in Section C, but with a completely new emotional lens.
Section C revisits the main theme.
It does. The main melodic theme from Section A, Mustafa Mahmoud's theme, comes back. But the key difference is how it's performed.
How so?
It's played naturally, without the intense, deep expression, the heightened emotion of Section B. The goal is contrast, emotional respite after the storm.
A moment of calm.
Exactly. And importantly, those sudden tempo drops, the right nudos on the 4th beat, they're omitted here.
Ah, so the tempo is stable.
Stable throughout, creating a more flowing feel, like a calm memory. The only exception is the very last phrase, that submission to fate motif. That still gets the ritornando and decrescendo.
Maintaining that core feeling of acceptance.
Right. And the purpose of this emotional reset, it's strategic. It acts as a bridge.
Preparing for what comes next.
Precisely. Preparing for the brighter, more reflective Section D, which focuses on virtues and merits. It lets the listener process the storm and get ready for a shift in perspective, from sorrow to legacy.
Okay, that makes perfect sense, like regrouping before a new chapter. So let's move into that new chapter. Section D, the bright part. How does Nasr create brightness in an elegy?
Primarily through a significant and very deliberate modal shift. Nasr thinks in terms of a conceptual scale of brightness.
How does that work?
He suggests Western major scales feel brightest, most stable, while D double harmonic major, the Hijaz scale prominent earlier, feels darkest, most evocative of that Middle Eastern sound world.
So where does Section D land on this scale?
It begins in G minor. Now, G minor can still feel somewhat melancholy, of course.
Sure.
But the transition from the very dark, questioning D double harmonic major to G minor creates a definite feeling of relative brightness and relief.
Like stepping into softer light.
Exactly. Serene contemplation rather than sharp pain.
And you mentioned adapting the original melody from the TV theme.
Yes, a fascinating detail. The original flute timpani melody had quarter tones, those microtones, essential to Arabic music.
Which pianos don't have.
Right. So Nasr had to cleverly adapt these lines for the piano, which has fixed pitches, without losing the essential Arabic flavor of the original.
How do you manage that?
Creative musical translation. Revoicing, reharmonizing subtly to preserve the original spirit and melodic contour on a Western instrument, ensuring authenticity despite the limitation.
Clever. How does the tempo and dynamic journey unfold in Section D?
It's very deliberate. It starts extremely slowly, just 20 BPM, and softly, broom, flowing out of the end of Section C, maintaining that gentle mood initially.
But it doesn't stay slow.
No. Then a gradual acceleration, accelerando, builds steadily from that 20 BPM up to a relatively fast and stable 85 BPM.
That's quite a build-up.
It mirrors the mood shift towards more activity, reflecting on a positive legacy. A quiet energy building, setting the pace for the section.
What about the hands? You mentioned specific techniques.
Yes, for the left hand, the instruction is leggero lightness. It plays very softly, P and legato, creating this continuous, subtle, harmonic haze, almost a tremolo-like effect around the bass notes, not clear melodies.
Like a shimmering backdrop.
A gentle halo of sound, exactly. And achieving that requires specific physical technique.
Oh, so?
Consciously reducing the force. Raising the wrist slightly, deviating from the usual heavy playing hand shape, flattening the fingers a bit, playing with the pad, not the tip. It minimizes effort, produces that soft, sustained, ethereal sound.
Okay, that's the left hand's hazy lightness. What about the right hand?
The right hand instruction is cantabile, a singing style. This is crucial.
How do you make a piano sing?
Best way is to imagine yourself singing the melody. Singers naturally vary intensity note by note. They subtly bend rhythm. They use clear contrasts. Loud, soft, connected, detached. A pianist needs to infuse the notes with that vocal emotion.
And Nasr connects this specifically to Arabic music.
He does, very insightfully. He suggests observing pianists who imitate legendary Arabic singers, like Kalthum.
How do they do that?
They don't just play the notes rigidly, they actively mimic the vocalist's nuances, ornaments, breath, pauses, even subtle stumbles or improvisations, making the instrument sound like it's truly singing, breathing, emoting like that voice.
So the pianist becomes a vocal interpreter on the keys.
Exactly. Transcending notes to embody the singer's spirit, especially characteristic of Arabic musical culture.
Amazing. Are there other key details within Section D?
Well, there's another repeated structure, offering more expressive chances. A key harmonic transition, like from G minor to C minor, needs clear articulation from the performer so the listener feels the shift.
And the repetition itself, does it change?
The repetition becomes animato lively, more active accompaniment, injecting new vitality. Left hand keeps its hazy texture, but the right hand might use rubato frequently, enhancing that singing quality.
Any other specific notes?
Yes, the second note in certain phrases should be short and light, staccato, a crisp contrast. And he points out the center of gravity in some chords should be on the higher, sharper notes like ebb, D.
Making them sound brighter.
Brighter, maybe more piercing or hopeful, not heavy, guiding the ear. And again, he reiterates that warning about fast jumps, prepare the hand, move the arm early, precision and avoiding injury.
That's incredible detail. Every instruction, every note, part of this meticulous narrative. We've gone through raw grief in B, reflection in C, luminous remembrance in D. Now we arrive at the end, the final poignant end section, the valediction. Section E, the last goodbye. What happens here?
Section E, the valediction or farewell, brings it all to this powerful, almost sacred conclusion. The tempo decreases again, subtly but noticeably, from 40 down to 35 BPM.
Slowing down for the end.
A profound sense of settling.
Yeah.
A final respectful bow. Nasr describes the atmosphere as the ultimate farewell ceremony, a last glimpse. The mood becomes even more solemn, darker than before, instilling deeper awe, finality.
Preparing for departure.
Yes. And the expressive instructions. They return with full force, intensified meaning, expressed deeply, and appassionato with strong emotion, passion.
How is that passion shown?
Nasr highlights the sequential arpeggios here. He hasn't specified exact speeds or dynamics for individual notes within them.
Giving the performer freedom.
Significant creative freedom to vary the speed and intensity of each note in the arpeggio, amplifying melancholy, expressive depth. Each arpeggio becomes a unique, heartfelt sigh washing over you.
And then comes that really striking moment you mentioned earlier.
Yes, perhaps the most profound, symbolically loaded moment in the whole piece, the disappearance of the main melodic theme.
The theme for Mustafa Mahmoud just vanishes.
Suddenly, almost shockingly, it vanishes from the texture. What's left? Only its surrounding harmonic shadows. The harmonies that used to accompany it, now empty of their melodic anchor.
That's not just musical technique, is it?
Not at all. It's a powerful, intentional, symbolic gesture. The melody representing the departed, their musical essence, is gone, mirroring their final departure from our world.
Wow.
The performer must grasp this symbolic meaning, perform this moment with immense spiritual depth, make the silence, the lingering harmony, resonate with the profound emptiness of absence. It aims for a spiritual response, not just musical.
A shared understanding of loss through sound and silence. That's incredibly powerful. The melody fading, leaving only echoes. And then right at the very end, Nasr gives an instruction that goes beyond notation entirely.
He does. It invites the performer and you listening into this deeply meditative, symbolic experience. It's almost a philosophical statement.
What does it say?
The final instruction reads, "Do not lift your hand from the piano nor your foot from the pedal until the sound completely fades and the soul entirely ascends."
Wow.
That's heavy.
It's not just technical. It's a profound spiritual directive. The symbolic meaning is clear, incredibly moving. This prolonged act represents the complete departure in the deceased's spirit, leaving our realm ascending.
And the sound fading signifies?
The sound's complete disappearance from the hall signifies their final ascent, their ultimate peaceful absence.
How is that executed technically?
The right sustained pedal is pressed and held continuously from a full measure before the very end, and it stays down forever, or rather, until the sound totally vanishes from the acoustic space.
Dynamics.
Maintained at a mezzo forte, ensuring maximum sustain. The gradual fade-out, the decrescendo, is managed mostly by the left hand, consistent with its role, allowing the sound to gently dissipate.
And what happens acoustically during this long fade?
It's fascinating. With the sustain pedal held, the piano undergoes secondary vibrations and sympathetic resonance, meaning other strings vibrate too.
Exactly. Even strings whose keys weren't struck, if they're harmonically related to the notes still ringing, they start to vibrate subtly in sympathy, creating these faint, shimmering sound waves.
Like ripples on water.
Yes. Not just the written notes sound, but all these undamped strings vibrate, producing faint, harmonically consistent waves that fill the space. A rich, shimmering, yet incredibly quiet, almost magical effect.
How does Nasr describe it?
He calls it like observing an ocean inside the piano. Sound waves intermingling, breaking, merging, eventually settling until the surface is completely calm.
And the effect on the audience?
This extended fade, 10, maybe 20 seconds, is meant to induce profound peace and contemplation. Nasr shares that audiences, even children, often remain in complete silence, holding their breath. An unparalleled sense of inner peace.
That sustained silence, waiting for the sound to utterly vanish.
Powerfully symbolizes that final, quiet departure, never to be seen again. It's a profound nugget of insight into how music represents deep human experience, moving beyond notes into shared silence and spiritual resonance. #outro.
Wow, what an incredible journey we've taken through Tarek Nasr's Martheya No. 5. Just amazing how a composer weaves structure, these expressive tools, and such deep personal symbolism together.
To create something truly moving, guiding us through grief, remembrance, and ultimately peace.
It really feels like we got an intimate lesson in how to be, well, truly well-informed about the hidden language of music itself.
Definitely. We've seen how precise instructions, tempo, dynamics, articulation, pedaling, aren't just technical marks on a page.
They're emotional guides.
Profound emotional guides, transforming abstract notes into this powerful narrative of loss, reflection, acceptance. Nasr's own analysis is like having the composer's map to the emotional territory.
This whole deep dive, it really shows the immense power of art, doesn't it? To communicate complex human experiences in ways words sometimes just can't reach. It reminds us that even seemingly simple instructions can hide these incredible layers of meaning, waiting to be discovered and felt if you listen closely.
The most profound insights often lie just beneath the surface.
Ready for us to dive deep.
So here's a thought to leave you with. Consider how understanding a composer's explicit intent, like we've explored with Tarek Nasr today, can fundamentally transform your listening experience.
How so?
Well, how might approaching music, or really any art form designed for an audience, with an awareness of the creator's precise purpose? How might that change not just how you listen or observe, but how you perceive the deeper messages embedded within?
Urging you to really absorb and internalize that artistic intention.
Exactly. How does knowing the why change the what for you?
A thought to mull over until our next deep dive.